Hello, everybody, and welcome to a segment that I think is going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, will be entertaining. It's called Living Legends. We're sitting here on this blustery fall day in the middle of the Lee University campus. Even though it's blustery, it's beautiful out here, and we're glad you're with us. It's called Living Legends, and I'm in this only because I'm living. These two are the legends on my right. And on my left, we have Dr. Lamar Vest, who was the 15th president of Lee University. And on my left is Dr. Paul Kahn, who was the 16th president and our chancellor. And they tell me around here that I'm the 17th president. So we're here. You got that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
We good?
Plus one.
Plus one.
You're the plus one president.
That's right. So we're just going to talk about just kind of what it means and meant to be the president. I think we're the three remaining presidents of the 17 presidents. And so we just want to have a conversation together and talk about just some of those days. And I'm here as the newbie, so I'm looking to you guys to kind of point me in the right direction and make sure I stay on the right track. So I guess maybe the first thing we might want to talk about is, where were you when you found out you were the president of Lee University? Dr. Vest, we'll start with you.
Wow, yeah, I remember that exactly. I was in London, England, and I got a call in the hotel that the executive committee wanted to get in touch with me. Went to a payphone out on the street in London, and that's when I was told that I was going to be considered as president of Lee College. I remember stretching that phone cord as far as I could and sitting down in the floor of that London phone booth saying, "You gotta be kidding." But that's where it all started. And I said, hold off until I get home. So we caught the next flight that we could get back to Cleveland, Tennessee. And that's how I found out that I was at least under consideration.
Very good. Dr. Kahn?
Well, mine's not nearly that exotic. You know, he was in London, right? This is the story of my life. Lamar Vest was in London, you know, one of the glamour destinations of the globe. I was in a bathroom stall in the men's room. You want to hear this?
No, not necessarily.
In the men's room at the General Assembly. Now, I was in there because I had been pulled in there by a member of the executive committee who was seeking a spot of privacy, you know. So we were standing for conversation, but we went into the bathroom. Someone came into the bathroom. This is Cecil Knight, no longer living. Cecil Knight was on the executive committee. And so this is 1986. Dr. Vest had just been elected to the executive committee, so it became clear that there was going to be a new president. Dr. Knight saw me from the stage. You know how these executive committee members do. You know, it's part of the deal in the office. You beckon people from the stage. And I've never been on the committee, so I've never actually beckoned anybody, but I've gestured, but they never came. He pointed to the backstage side. We went into a bathroom, and he started to talk, and somebody came in, so we just stood in the stall. So that's how I learned. He said, "Hey, Doc, I think we got the vote." See, now, there's not a scrap of the Lord's will in that story. That's essentially a political story.
Well, I happened to be in the School of Religion. I was interceding, saying, "Lord, if this cup can pass from me, let it." I was of course, I was the chair of the Christian Ministries Department and vice president for ministerial development, so that's where my office was. I was in a meeting, had just come out of the meeting. This was January 31st, 2020, this year. Yeah. And came out of the meeting, my phone rang, and nobody took me into a bathroom stall. I wasn't in a phone booth, but I was on a phone call. Went into my office, and it was Dennis Livingston, the chairman of the board, and he said, "We want to offer you the position of president of Lee University." And I literally went numb.
Know the feeling.
And began to shake a little bit as you heard those words, and accepted it. And later I went back and looked at my phone just to see how long that phone call was, and it was 7 minutes. And I got a talk in my head that I'm going to use at some point in time, 7 minutes that'll change your life, because It certainly was. I think you both would
Oh,
agree. It's
yeah.
a life-changing moment.
It is, definitely.
Where you feel that weight, you feel that
Yeah.
privilege, you feel that responsibility. But you know that you can't do this, I don't think, unless you feel, though, there's a God call to it. Right? Would you agree with that? That you felt a sense of God call to this?
Yeah, I am definitely sure that God has something to do with people becoming president of
At least
Lee.
we hope so, right?
But yeah, but there's a lot of compromising on the road to that horizon. There are boards and committees, and then for me, there was a wife to talk to about whether we should take on this. So there's a lot of
Do you have one of those?
Yeah, but yeah, we won't get into that. Honey, I love you wherever you are. Come home.
I've got one of those too. But
right.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr. Best.
Absolutely,
I
no.
interrupt.
But I mean, again, thinking about how I became president was a very unique thing. And I genuinely believe God placed me here for a reason and for a purpose. And I think that purpose was fulfilled the day I walked into Professor Kahn's office and said to him, I want you to be vice president. And he took several days to consider it and finally came to my house on a Sunday morning and told me that he felt that God had spoken to his heart and that this was the right thing to do. And of course, when I got into the office, one of the first visits I had was from one of those rare people who didn't necessarily support Paul Kahn. And he said, that's the most stupid thing you've ever done, and you will rue the day. Don't you know this guy wants to be president of Lee? And I said, I sure hope so, because that's exactly the reason I've asked him to be vice president, because I believe this is God's will for Paul Kahn. And I saw that early on, that God had a plan, and what has happened here is evident that God put me here for perhaps other reasons, but that was one of the main reasons. And I'm happy to fulfill that responsibility. As I said on one of the other videos, it's very rare in one's life that you get to play the role of John the Baptist.
Thank God you weren't
Well,
crucified.
you know, Mark, you asked how did you learn you were going to be president? A more interesting question for the inquiring minds who want to know might be, where were you when you learned you were not going to be president anymore? And it's interesting, it's that same phone call you got from Dennis Livingston. I was standing right there and I heard him say, Mark, you're going to be the next president. I said to Dennis, does that mean I'm done? And he said, yeah, you're out, Con. We got Walker, we got the new guy. So, no, that's a joke, folks. Remember jokes, don't you? It was pre-Trump.
I
when
thought
you
you
could
were
tell jokes.
I thought you were getting ready to tell me my time was done. It's what you were scaring me to death all of a sudden. So, Dr. Conrad, based on what Dr. Vest was just saying, what do you recall about that day when he asked you to be vice president? And
Hey, I remember it very well. As a matter of fact, you know, somebody's writing a history of Lee, Dr. Vest. There's never really been a really full history of Lee, but one of our history profs is writing a history of Lee, and he's not an insider. You know, he's not a guy that grew up here, went to school here. He's just a history guy, and very insightful about Lee. But he interviewed me recently. He may have also interviewed you, or that's coming up. I'm not sure, but you know, he was asked. I was telling him about this visit to my office, 203B. Actually, if you think you have a small office,
Right.
forget about it. You know, I had room in my office for one little chair, and Dr. Vest came to my office, which I thought was pretty impressive because I'd never known a president to stray outside the no-fire zone, you know. And I remember that exchange when I said, no, you got to remember, Lamar and I, as I would call him then, were very good friends. And I wanted him to become president in 1984. Really talked him into it. We sat out here at Hardee's, do you remember this?
Oh, yes, I
3
do.
a.m. and talked about it because, you know, it wasn't an easy sell for the board to get him to come do it. But anyway, when he came in and asked me, I said, you know, the last thing in the world I want to do is be your vice president. And he said, you know, and the last thing I want to do is ask you to be my vice president. But, you know, we need to do this together. We need, you know, we need to do this together, and we did, and it was great. It was wonderful.
Absolutely.
So, obviously, both of you have served in this position much longer than I have. What was one of your most rewarding or best days that you might recall serving as the president?
Well, for me, I mean, you know, there were many best days. The best days that I had at Lee were dealing with the students because I'd been in youth and Christian education work. And as Dr. Kahn knows, when I found out that I was going to be president, as General Director of Youth and Christian Education, mobilized all of the state directors to start a recruitment program, and our enrollment jumped several hundred in that first year. So my contact with those students, because I knew so many of the students, having known them, you know, in youth camps and other places. And so for me, you know, the rewarding experience was serving the students. You guys are far more comfortable with meeting with administrators and faculty than me, but my role was with the student. And I think that's sort of turned the whole tide, Paul, for the way Lee views the student body. Because again, you know, I remember saying to some of the administrators that I'm going to interview everybody that's hired at Lee. And they said, well, no, the faculty takes care of screening faculty. And I said, look, I'm not going to screen them as far as their educational abilities. I just want to ask them one question. Do you like young people? Because I found a lot of people in professional work that loved the salaries, but they didn't really care about students. And I think that's the thing that turned around, Paul, while you and I worked together, was that Lee became a place focused on students. And you carried that on in such a beautiful way.
No, that definitely was. That was a sea change. And, you know, we'd been through tough times as an institution. And so things were kind of grim in many ways. And that was very refreshing. And students felt that. And yeah, that was a new concept. I remember some pushback from faculty about that. It
Yes.
was kind of, not all faculty. We had some wonderful faculty who got it when it came to students. But as far as being an institutional policy in that direction.
You remember when we used to have homecoming on Thanksgiving?
That's right.
And I said, no, we're not going to have it. And we had some pushback, and the one person who was in charge of it said, we've done it this way for years. And I said, well, okay, if we have homecoming on Thanksgiving, while our students are eating in the cafeteria and you're eating at home with your family, just doesn't seem like a fair proposition. So here's the deal. We either change the date of homecoming or all faculty and staff will eat in the cafeteria with the students. Well, since you put it that way, we probably need to change the date. That's how we got the date changed.
Yeah, but you know, to flesh that out, that was a preacher deal. Homecoming at Thanksgiving wasn't for the faculty, although they got set in their ways, and it was for the preachers, because almost all of our alumni were preachers in those days, and they wanted to be back in their pulpits on Sunday. And so we had homecoming on Thanksgiving Day, and then kids would actually go back to class on Friday after Thanksgiving Day. It's hard to imagine now. And then the preachers could go home Saturday and be in their churches on Sunday. And when you changed that, it was as if the foundations of the earth were shaken. You know, people looked through their King James versions trying to find out where it said, Lee homecoming shall therefore be on
On Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that was a good change. We made some other good changes in those days. Lee Day, which Dr. Vest helped start, you know, we'd always had just a hometown crowd at Lee Day. And he gave us permission to invite a Hollywood star to come give her testimony at Lee Day.
Who might that have been?
A girl named Lisa Whelchel. What show was she on, ladies and gentlemen?
Facts of Life.
Facts of Life. Lisa Whelchel, Facts of Life. She was a born-again Christian, I went to Dr. Vest and said, can we invite this girl to give her testimony and we can get some kids out this way? He said, okay, because, he was a high-risk kind of president. The problem was, it was big. It was fun. It was big fun. The problem was, I don't want to shock the children. You might want to cover the ears of your children, your young ones. She showed up wearing pants.
Oh my.
Pants.
Oh my.
A woman.
At Lee?
Well, she never got to Lee. We intercepted her because we had the goon squad out there to stop her.
Oh, yeah, right.
But
Those
she
were
got
the
off.
days.
She got off the plane in Chattanooga wearing a pair of slacks. Now, I blush to say this, but it's absolutely true. We had a dilemma, ladies and gentlemen. We knew it was already high risk to have a Hollywood star
right.
who was not Pentecostal on stage. But we knew she could not walk out there in front of all those state youth directors and all those pastors wearing pants. And, this is one of the things I love about Danny Murray. He's totally shameless, fearless. I believe he and Debbie said to her, we have this tradition, it's kind of a thing where women wear skirts. And of course, she didn't have a skirt with her. They took her to a dress shop here in Cleveland that afternoon, and she was a good sport and went along, and they bought her a skirt or a dress, and she went on the stage in it and saved my job.
Yeah, see, I never knew that. This is news to me, but I'm not.
But presidents don't need to know everything.
No, presidents don't know everything. I'm sorry.
I've come to realize presidents don't know everything.
Here's the point, you categorize me as a high risk, but do you remember when you came to California to preach my youth camp? I just moved there and had been told by the state council, look, we're in California, but we don't want any of these hippie types preaching in our camp.
Absolutely not.
So I showed up at the LA airport to pick up Paul Kahn, who was youth minister at Mount Perrin, right?
Right. Yeah.
Was he wearing slacks?
No,
Oh.
but he was wearing sandals and his hair was down to his shoulder. And I thought, I'm gonna get fired. So I met him at the gate. Those were the days when you could go to the gate. So we started toward the luggage rack, the luggage department, and I made a right turn instead of a left. And Paul said, no, the luggage. And I said, no. He said, where are we going? I said, we're going to the barbershop. He said, are you going to get a haircut? I said, no, you are. And you know what? He did.
Of course I did.
Saved my job.
I'm a man under subjection. That's true. But
Excuse me 1 second. I just need to take a few notes. I'm learning a lot here.
Your people are taking notes.
Are they?
Oh, yeah.
I got people?
You got
people.
people.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Hey, I would point this out to whoever's listening. He got me a haircut. What is that, $5 in those days? He did not buy me a pair of shoes, however. I went out there and preached at camp meeting, and I was bad. I was a hippie. I had long hair. I wore sandals.
Kind of the Jesus look, right?
Yeah.
That's why he kept his sandals. If he'd have told me Jesus had long hair before, he might have kept it. But I mentioned the sandals, and he said, well, Jesus wore sandals. Oh, that's good. That's fine.
Hey, think about this, guys. He was the lowly state youth director of California. You talk about getting shipped to the provinces, to the hinterlands. That's pretty much what that. And after I went out there and spoke for him that week, he became the general overseer. Think about it. Think about it.
All because I got you a haircut. No, that was great. It turned out to be one of the best youth camps. And Paul, you may not believe this, but I still remember some of the messages and some of the talks that you gave. And it was obvious that God had directed your life toward ministering to young people. And that's
anyway,
evident.
to those of you who don't, and I would hope if most of you don't know anything about the Church of God lore, that's when Lamar Vest and I became friends. So by the time he came, then he left California and did 12 years in the National Youth Department before he became president. Well, during that time, the friendship flourished. So by the time Dr. Vest came to Lee to be president, we were very good friends. And so,
Absolutely.
you know, we were on the same page. I started to say from day one, but before day one, we were on the same page.
Absolutely.
Let me ask this. We talk about some rewarding days, good days. What have been maybe some of the more difficult days? Some challenging times that you had
Boy.
during your presidency?
Well, I mean, Dr. Kahn will remember that when I assumed the role as president, Lee had suffered a 7-year steady decline in enrollment. And there were some financial difficulties. So we had to do some really creative things to generate enrollment and to increase the finances. So yeah, I mean, it was a big challenge. I mean, during the process of my becoming president, there was a big discussion between the powers that be, you know, as to whether I should be the president or not. And actually, you know, I was shocked to even get the call, because coming out of the, coming out of the office of General Director of Youth and Christian Education, you don't get to Lee from there. And so it didn't seem like the appropriate or proper thing, and that's why I was a bit reluctant. But as we went through this process, you know, it became very obvious that God put me here for a purpose and a reason. And I think it was not only to get Paul Kahn as vice president and eventually serving on the executive committee and making the nomination that he become the president of Lee. It was to give us an opportunity to change the direction of this institution. And it's like I say to students when I teach at the seminary or in pastors' conferences to young ministers, you know, don't ever get good at something you don't enjoy doing, because you'll have to do it all your life. And so for me, you know, my role in life has been sort of playing the turnaround situation. When I left here, went to the executive committee, was elected as general overseer, was the year of the big financial cut. And so we had to turn it around. Then went to the American Bible Society when it was on a downward trend. So I think, you know, God uses us for certain times and certain purposes. And I have to say this, Dr. Walker, I believe God's put you here for a specific purpose and for a specific time. And Dr. Kahn and I have talked about this. I don't know of anybody that can fill in now better. We are the only 3 people that are presidents, have been president and are president of Lee. And God has put you here for a special reason. And our prayers and support are with you.
Thank you.
You know,
very
I like
much.
to think of it this way. There are 2 kinds of people in the world. Those who have been presidents of Lee and those who haven't.
Not.
You know? And yeah, you're right. It's a small club. Welcome to the club.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think.
Dr. Vest and I have gotten kind of lonely, you know, just the 2 of us. I'll be the chairman, he'll be the vice chairman for a while. He'll be the chairman, I'll be the vice chairman for a while.
Challenging day, challenging time.
Too depressing, can't really get into it. There have been a lot of them, but I think people remember that we've had some real tough deaths, sudden deaths on our faculty and among students, and I don't think there's a harder, I remember the first student fatality after I became president. I don't think I ever had a worse day, because there was just something about it. I wasn't prepared for it. I was thinking about Lee in terms of growth and building and promotion, and I wasn't thinking like a pastor. And I had no idea how much the president of Lee actually plays the role of a pastor. You've been a pastor 25 years or more, 30 years. Dr. Vest had been a pastor. I hadn't. In those days, you preached every Sunday night. The president preached every Sunday night. You really had a sense of pastoral connection to these students. anytime during this last year that I've been heading for the exit, and people have asked, what's the big moments, what's the bad moments, that day hits me. I thought, I don't know if I can do this. I thought it was all, going to be ribbon cuttings and groundbreaking. So anyway, that's that kind of personal thing. I think it goes back to what Dr. Vest is saying about ultimately, as he conceived it and as I followed in that tradition, being the president is about ministering to students, serving students, being connected to students. And so that means it's a shock in the gut when you get that phone call or make that phone call.
That's what brought me here in terms of the ministry to students, the student engagement, which you mentioned earlier on about the most rewarding days and best days. That's what I've experienced since coming 3 years ago as a vice president and now in the role of president. The best days for me are when I am with students.
Absolutely.
And that's what brought me here. You mentioned I was a pastor for 30 plus years. I didn't think there was a greater calling. I didn't think there was anything better to be than a pastor. And when you had talked to me about coming to be vice president, one of the major hurdles I had to get over was how do I walk away from being the pastor? How do I do that? And I had to work through all of that. But I think one of the things that helped with that is the Lord helped me to see that coming in this role in vice president, now I see it even more as president, is that you do have the opportunity to be that to students. How you've modeled that, and Dr. Vest has modeled that, kind of set that tone, and has set the tone for the whole campus in terms of, I think that's what we want all of our staff, all of our faculty to be, engaging with students, being there for students, investing in students. And that's my most rewarding, and I think the most challenging for me since I've been here and just 3 months into being the president is the impact that negative impact on students' lives is the real challenge, because students don't always make the right decisions, right? They make poor choices, and you find yourself having to do discipline. You find yourself having to deal with their hurt of those wrong choices or just the bad news they get in their lives. And so, yeah, this is not about, as I have come to more discover, just sitting behind a desk, pushing a bunch of paper. It is truly about engaging in the heart of these young men and women that come here.
Yeah, and whoever's producing this, maybe we could do a special segment on student discipline cases of well-known people. I think it's time for that, don't you?
Hey, yeah, the two of you would be at the top of the list, though.
Well,
No. No, I'd like to call out by name
go ahead.
the now prominent leaders who I had the misfortune of helping shape their good-for-nothing lives.
Well, we have just a few moments left to close out this segment. I would ask, okay, I've been the president now about 3 months.
How's it going for you so far?
Well, that's a whole nother segment. If I were your younger self, what would you be telling yourself about being president?
I would say, talk to Paul Kahn.
Okay.
No, I want to hear this advice because I don't think I ever got this advice.
Oh, yes, you
from
did.
the man himself,
No. Well, yeah, I mean, again, my advice would be love the students.
Okay, I got that.
Yeah,
but,
that
okay.
was it.
But, as I recall, I walked into your office having become president, and there was a stack of work on the desk that you had planned to get to on Monday morning, but instead you're over there in the promised land, and the top thing on the list was a memo from me asking for something which I knew immediately was ridiculous and unreasonable.
Well,
It was kind of like, what would Jesus do? It's like, what would Lamar do? He turned this thing down, so I turned it down. I sent it up to my empty office and turned it down.
Yeah, well, the truth of the matter is I never got back in the office. I mean, I came back to the office to get some of my stuff, and everything that I had that I belonged to me had already been moved across town. So I didn't have a choice in that. But to give advice, I don't know. I have a difficult time giving advice if I don't have to make the final decision. And you're the man now who has to live with the consequences of every decision. So my advice to you is don't take a lot of advice from former presidents. Do what you feel is best and what God has laid on your heart. That's it. I'm sure Paul doesn't agree with that.
My advice would be
Listen to the
seek
chancellor.
counsel from the former president. Seek godly wisdom. No, my advice would be, I don't have any advice, honestly.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
My
Appreciate
advice
it.
would be rethink this decision, young
Yes.
man. I don't know. That's a hard question, and I really don't know that I have a one-size-fits-all. I tell the students, or I used to tell the students, dream big, work small, trust God. The old advice to people: if you want to become a great person, start by making up your bed every morning. That's kind of the way it is around this campus. Pick up the cigarette butts.
Where's that location?
Oh, it's all over.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You can find if you. No, I picked up a cigarette butt once during commencement. During commencement,
No way.
in my presidential robe, invested with the power and authority granted to me by the office. I looked down at the ground as we were marching in and saw a cigarette butt, a fresh cigarette butt. I picked it up and put it in my pocket.
So there's a piece of advice. Look for cigarette butts.
No, if you see a cigarette butt, pick it up.
Yeah. I don't mean to be trite about this thing of taking advice, but if I had taken all of the advice that I had been given, Lee would not be what it is today. So again, take advice.
Fire Paul Kahn, for example, that.
Listen, but then you have to put it within the context of where you are and what's taking place now. And what might have worked under my administration or what even might have worked under Dr. Kahn's administration may not be the best advice for you. So, the best thing is listen to whatever advice you're given, but do what you know is the best. That's the important thing. That's why
Guys?
you're here.
Anything else? Any great other?
No,
Closing parting
let me
words?
just say to the homecoming crowd, hey, we're glad you're a part of this. We would prefer to have a big crowd here, and Lord willing, in 2021 we'll have one, and we'll have a ball game and a concert, and the Ped Mall full of students. So this year that wasn't possible, of course, and so Dr. Moffitt and Dr. Ashcraft have put together a terrific virtual homecoming, and I'm sure glad you're a part of it. And they told me when the bell sounded and the half hour stopped within 30 seconds.
Who told you that?
The little men in my head.
Well, to echo Dr. Kahn's word, thank you for being with us. And I think if anybody's familiar with Game Day on ESPN, they close out with choosing who's going to win that particular game, making the prediction. Well, we don't have a game, but I think everybody recognizes the head of Valor here. What do you think?
I think it.
You think? Give it a shot?
It matches your
Matches my...
matches your blazer.
Hey, folks, thanks for being with us.
Hey, well,
Come
no,
on.
No.
I'm going to put...
Okay. Okay,
Now, y'all told me not to take advice from y'all, right?
that's right.
So that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
I am going to do this. Hey, thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of Homecoming 2020.